Arab billionaire buys a single mom to have a child, but the truth leaves him speechless. The marble floors of the Burj Al Arab gleamed under the golden chandeliers as Sheikh Rashid Al Mansouri stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the Dubai skyline shimmer in the heat. At 38, he had everything money could buy: luxury hotels across 3 continents, private jets, rare cars, and influence that made presidents return his calls. Yet the one thing he desperately wanted remained beyond his reach: an heir. Before we begin the beautiful story, please subscribe. It's free, and it makes my day 100% better. Also like and comment where you're watching from. I would be glad to know this story goes as far as Canada, all of the United States of America, Australia, Africa, and even the United Kingdom. So let me know where you're watching from on comment section. I pray may the good God Almighty bless and preserve you all and your family. Amen. Let's begin. The doctors had been clear. After the accident that nearly killed him 5 years ago, his chances of fathering a child naturally were almost impossible. Almost. There was one path forward, one that required a woman willing to carry his child through artificial means, someone who wouldn't complicate his life with emotions or demands, someone who needed money more than she needed love. That's when his attorney, Mr. Hassan, brought him the file. Her name is Felipa Santos, Hassan said, sliding the folder across the mahogany desk. 29 years old, Filipino immigrant, working 3 jobs to support her 5-year-old son. She's drowning in medical debt from her son's heart surgery. She's desperate, discreet, and according to our background check, she has no family who would interfere. Rashid studied the photograph. Felipa wasn't what he expected. Despite the exhaustion evident in her eyes, there was something striking about her, and dignity that poverty hadn't erased. Her son, Miguel, smiled brightly in the photo beside her, unaware of the burden his small heart had placed on his mother's shoulders. How much does she owe? Rashid asked, his voice devoid of emotion. $230,000. The hospital is threatening to send collectors. Offer her $500,000. $250 now, the rest after she delivers a healthy child. She'll live in the guest house on my estate until the birth. After that, she disappears with her money and her son. Hassan hesitated. Sheikh Rashid, are you certain about this arrangement? There are agencies that... I don't want agencies. I don't want contracts that can be leaked to the press. I want someone who understands this is a transaction, nothing more. He closed the folder without looking at Felipa's face again. Make it happen. 3 days later, Felipa stood in that same office, her hands trembling as she held the contract that could save her son's future. She had read it 17 times, each clause more surreal than the last. She would undergo the procedure, carry the child for 9 months, and hand the baby over immediately after birth. She would have no parental rights, no contact, no claims. In exchange, her debts would vanish, and she'd have enough money to give Miguel the life she'd always dreamed of for him. Ms. Santos, Hassan's voice cut through her thoughts. Sheikh Rashid needs an answer today. Felipa looked up at the attorney, then at the photograph of Miguel in her wallet, his gap-toothed smile, his innocent eyes that knew nothing of the impossible choices poverty forced upon those who love him. Where do I sign? She whispered. The guest house, Rashid's estate, was larger than any home Felipa had ever lived in. With its own kitchen, 3 bedrooms, a garden view, and staff who brought meals 3 times a day, it felt like a dream. But it was a gilded cage, and Felipa knew it. The rules were clear. She was to have minimal contact with Sheikh Rashid. The medical procedures would be handled by his private doctors. She could have her son visit on weekends, but Rashid's main residence was off limits. She was there to perform a service, nothing more. The first month passed in a blur of medical appointments, hormone treatments, and waiting. Felipa spent her days reading to pass the time, video calling Miguel, who was staying with her friend Rosa during the week, and trying not to think about what she was really doing, creating a life she would never know. Then came the evening that changed everything. It was late October, and a rare thunderstorm had swept across Dubai. The power in the guest house flickered and died, leaving Felipa in complete darkness. She fumbled for her phone, but the battery had died hours ago. Panic began to set in, not for herself, but because Miguel had called earlier, crying about a nightmare, and she'd promised to call him back. She had no choice but to cross the garden to the main house. The rain soaked through her clothes in seconds as she ran across the manicured lawn. She pounded on the service entrance, praying someone would hear. Instead, the massive door swung open to reveal Sheikh Rashid himself, dressed in casual clothes she'd never seen him wear, a simple white t-shirt and dark pants. He looked almost normal. Ms. Santos. He frowned. What are you doing out in this storm? I'm sorry, I know I'm not supposed to be here, but the power is out and my phone is dead and I promised my son I would call him back. He's scared and... The words tumbled out in a rush. Rashid's expression softened imperceptibly. Come in. You're soaking wet. He led her through corridors she'd only seen in the estate brochure, past priceless art and furniture that probably cost more than her entire life's earnings. They arrived at his study, where he handed her his personal phone. Call your son. Felipa's hand shook as she dialed Rosa's number. Miguel's voice came through, small and frightened. Mama. I'm here, baby. I'm here. Tell me about your dream. As she soothed her son's fears, speaking in a mixture of English and Tagalog, Rashid watched from across the room. He had intended to leave her to her call, but something kept him there. The tenderness in her voice, the way she transformed when speaking to her child, it was a kind of love he'd never witnessed up close. When she finally hung up, Felipa wiped her eyes. Thank you. I'm sorry for the intrusion. Your son had a nightmare. Rashid asked, surprising himself by continuing the conversation. Yes. He has them sometimes. Since the surgery, the hospital scared him. She looked down. I hate that I can't be with him every night. The surgery that led you here. Felipa nodded. Miguel was born with a congenital heart defect. They said he might not make it past 5 without surgery. The operation saved his life, but it destroyed mine financially. But I'd do it again. 1,000 times. He's my whole world. Something in Rashid's chest tightened. He thought of his own mother, who had died when he was 7. He barely remembered her, but he remembered the feeling of being loved absolutely. His father had been a distant man, more concerned with building the family fortune than building a relationship with his son. You're a good mother, he said quietly. Felipa looked at him in surprise. It was the first personal thing he'd ever said to her. I try to be. That's why I'm doing this. So he can have a future. An awkward silence fell between them. Then Rashid cleared his throat. The storm should pass soon. You can wait here until the power returns. He expected her to sit quietly, to understand that this didn't change the nature of their arrangement. Instead, Felipa looked at the books lining his shelves and gasped. Is that a first edition of 1001 Nights? Rashid blinked. You know it. My father used to read it to me when I was little, before he passed away. She moved closer to the shelf, her eyes bright. He loved the story of Scheherazade. He said she was the smartest woman in all of literature because she knew that stories could save lives. My mother read them to me too, Rashid admitted, the words leaving his mouth before he could stop them. I haven't thought about that in years. For the next hour, as the storm raged outside, they talked. About books, about childhoods, about the weight of expectations and the cost of survival. Rashid learned that Felipa had been a teacher in the Philippines before immigrating to Dubai for better opportunities. She learned that behind his cold exterior, Rashid was a man who had forgotten how to connect with people because everyone in his life wanted something from him. When the lights finally flickered back on in the guest house, visible through the study windows, neither of them moved immediately. I should go, Felipa said softly. Yes, Rashid agreed, but his voice lacked conviction. As she reached the door, he called out, Ms. Santos, next weekend, when your son visits, if you'd like, he could see the stables. I have Arabian horses. Children usually enjoy them. Felipa turned, her eyes questioning. I thought we were supposed to maintain distance. We are. But your son, he shouldn't be punished for our arrangement. It was a small kindness, but it cracked something in the walls they'd both built. The medical procedure was scheduled for November 15th. Philippa underwent it in Rashid's private medical facility, surrounded by the best doctors money could hire. The embryo, created from Rashid's preserved genetic material and a donor egg, was transferred. Now came the waiting. Dr. Amira, the fertility specialist, had been cautiously optimistic. Given Ms. Santos's health and age, I'd say we have a 65% chance of success. We'll know for certain in 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks were the longest of Felipa's life. She tried to distract herself by reading, by video calling Miguel every day, by not thinking about the fact that she might be carrying a child inside her. But it was impossible not to wonder. Against protocol and probably against his better judgment, Rashid found himself checking on her more often. He told himself it was just ensuring his investment was being protected. But the truth was more complicated. After that night in the storm, something had shifted. He would see her walking in the garden and find himself joining her. They would talk about inconsequential things, the weather, books, the latest news. She had a sharp mind and a perspective on life that was refreshingly different from the sycophants who usually surrounded him. And then Miguel came to visit. Rashid had stayed away during previous weekend visits, maintaining the boundaries. But curiosity got the better of him. He found himself walking toward the stables where Felipa had brought her son to see the horses. "Mama, look, he's eating from my hand." Miguel's delighted laughter rang out across the stable yard. The boy was smaller than Rashid had expected, with his mother's eyes and a surgical scar barely visible at the neckline of his t-shirt. He was feeding apple slices to a gentle man named Zura, his face lit up with pure joy. "You must be very brave to come so close," Rashid said, stepping forward. Miguel looked up with wide eyes. "Are you the prince?" "Mama said we are staying in a prince's house." Rashid felt an unexpected warmth spread through his chest. Not a prince, just Rashid. "Would you like to learn how to brush her meneh?" For the next hour, Rashid did something he'd never done before. He taught a child about horses. He showed Miguel how to brush Zura's coat, explain how to read a horse's body language, and even let the boy sit in the saddle while he led the mare in a gentle circle around the paddock. Felipa watched from the fence, her heart doing something complicated. This was the man who had essentially bought her womb, who had reduced her to a transaction. Yet here he was, patient and kind with her son, showing a gentleness she hadn't known he possessed. When Miguel ran off to pet the barn cats, Rashid approached Felipa at the fence. "He's a good boy. You've raised him well." "Thank you. And thank you for this. He hasn't smiled like that in a long time." "It's nothing." But his voice said it was something. "Can I ask you a question?" Felipa said carefully, "Why do you want a child if you keep everyone at such a distance?" Rashid's jaw tightened. For a long moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Because I'm the last of my line. When I die, everything my family has built dies with me. I need an heir, someone to carry on the Al-Mansuri name." "But what about love? Don't you want your child to know you, not just inherit from you?" "Love is a luxury. Legacy is a responsibility." His words were hard, but his eyes betrayed something else, a loneliness so deep it had its own gravity. Before Felipa could respond, Miguel came running back. "Can I come again next week? Please." "We'll see, baby," Felipa said, ruffling his hair. But Rashid surprised them both. "Every weekend, if you'd like. Zura seems to have taken a liking to you." That night, alone in his vast bedroom, Rashid stood at the window staring at the guest house. For the first time since conceiving this plan, he felt a flicker of doubt. This was supposed to be simple. A transaction. So why did his chest tighten when he saw Miguel smile? Why did conversations with Felipa make him forget about the careful walls he'd built around his heart? And 3 days later, when Dr. Amira called them both to the medical facility and announced with a smile that the procedure had been successful, Felipa was pregnant. Why did the news fill him with equal parts satisfaction and terror? "Congratulations," Dr. Amira said to them both. If all goes well, you'll have a baby in approximately 9 months. Felipa's hand went to her still flat stomach, her expression complex. Rashid saw fear there, and wonder, and grief for the child she would have to give away. Are you all right? He asked when they were alone in the corridor. I don't know, she admitted. This is what we agreed to, what I signed up for. But now it's real, and I'm going to grow this baby and feel it move, and then I have to give it away like it meant nothing. It's not that it means nothing. Isn't it, though? Her eyes met his, challenging. You want an heir, not a child. You want someone to inherit your legacy, not someone to love. And I'm just the vessel, the incubator you paid for. Her words stung because they were true, or at least they had been true. Now, standing in the sterile corridor with Felipa's hand on her stomach and accusation in her eyes, Rashid wasn't sure what he wanted anymore. I should go, Felipa said, moving past him. I need to call Miguel. Tell him he's going to be a big brother, even though he'll never understand why his sibling isn't coming home with us. She left Rashid alone in the corridor, her footsteps echoing away. For the first time in 5 years, since the accident that had stolen his chance at fatherhood and killed the woman he'd been engaged to, Rashid felt something crack in his carefully constructed armor. This was going to be more complicated than he'd planned. He growing bond and dangerous feelings. December brought cooler weather to Dubai and an unexpected shift in the household dynamics. Felipa's pregnancy progressed smoothly, but with it came the reality of their situation. They were two people bound together by an unorthodox arrangement, living in close proximity, and fighting against a growing connection neither had anticipated. Rashid found himself making excuses to check on her. Morning sickness. He had the chef prepare ginger tea. Difficulty sleeping. He arranged for a pregnancy pillow from Switzerland. Boredom. He opened his private library to her, the one room in his house he'd never shared with anyone. You don't have to do all this, Felipa said one afternoon, finding him in the library arranging a comfortable reading chair by the window for her. I'm protecting my investment, he replied automatically, but the excuse sounded hollow even to him. Is that really all this is? She moved closer, her hand unconsciously resting on the small bump beginning to show. Because it doesn't feel that way anymore. Rashid turned to face her, and the air between them charged with something dangerous. It has to be. We had an agreement. Agreements can change. People can change. Not people like me. But even as he said it, he knew it was a lie. He was changing. Every conversation with her, every weekend spent watching her son's joy at the smallest things, every moment he caught himself thinking about what it would be like to be a family. He was changing, and it terrified him. Felipa studied his face. What are you so afraid of, Rashid? No one had asked him that question in years. No one had dared. Of losing control, he admitted quietly. Of wanting something I can't have. Of. He stopped, the words too dangerous to speak aloud. Of loving someone again. Felipa finished. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Then Rashid did something he'd sworn he wouldn't do. He closed the distance between them and touched her face, his thumb brushing her cheek with devastating gentleness. This can't happen, he whispered. I know, she whispered back. But neither of them moved away. The spell was broken by Miguel's laughter outside the window. He was in the garden with Hassan's daughter, Amira, who had started bringing her own children to play when Miguel visited. The sound reminded them both of what was at stake, of the innocent lives that would be affected by their choices. Rashid dropped his hand and stepped back. I have a meeting in the city. I'll be gone until tomorrow. Running away? Felipa asked, but her tone was gentle, understanding. Strategically retreating, he corrected with the ghost of a smile. There's a difference. After he left, Felipa sank into the chair he'd arranged for her and pressed her hands to her stomach. At 15 weeks, she'd started to feel flutters, the baby moving inside her. Each flutter was a reminder of the impossible situation she'd put herself in. She was falling for a man who had bought her like a commodity. She was carrying a child she would have to surrender. And worst of all, She was starting to imagine a future that could never exist, one where she and Miguel and Rashid and this baby were a real family. "I'm so stupid," she whispered to the empty room. "I let myself feel when I knew I couldn't afford to." But the heart doesn't follow contracts or logic. And somewhere across the city, in his office overlooking the Burj Khalifa, Rashid was learning the same painful lesson. Dark secrets. It was Hassan who first noticed the discrepancies. As Rashid's attorney and oldest friend, he'd been handling the financial aspects of the arrangement with Philippa. But when he reviewed the background check they'd done on her, something didn't add up. "Rashid, we need to talk," Hassan said, entering the study without knocking, a privilege only he had. "If this is about the Singapore deal, it's about Philippa Santos." Rashid's entire demeanor changed. "What about her?" Hassan laid out a series of documents on the desk. "I was doing a routine check to ensure the payments were processing correctly when I noticed something odd. The medical debt we paid off? It was recent, yes. But the hospital records show that Miguel's surgery happened 2 years ago, not 6 months ago as we were told." "So she took time to pay?" "No. The original debt was paid in full 2 years ago by a foundation, the Children's Heart Foundation, based in Manila. But then 6 months ago, a new debt appeared in her name, one that shouldn't exist." Rashid's mind raced. Someone falsified the records. "That's what it looks like. And there's more." Hassan pulled out another document. Philippa Santos didn't just come to Dubai for better opportunities. She came here running from someone. Her ex-husband, Miguel's father, Dante Santos. He's a dangerous man with connections to organized crime in Manila. She fled with Miguel after he threatened to take the boy and use him as leverage in his business dealings. The blood drained from Rashid's face. Why wasn't this in the original background check? Hassan looked uncomfortable. The agency we used did a surface check. They confirmed she was desperate for money, which was all we asked them to verify. I'm the one who dug deeper. "Rashid, I think someone manipulated her into this arrangement. Someone who knew she'd do anything to protect her son." "Who?" "I don't know yet, but the timing is too convenient. Right when you were looking for a surrogate, suddenly there's this woman with fabricated debt, no family to interfere, and a desperate need for money. Someone wanted her in this position." Rashid stood abruptly, his mind reeling. "Where is she now?" "In the guest house. But Rashid, there's something else." Hassan hesitated. Dante Santos arrived in Dubai 3 days ago. He's been asking questions about his ex-wife and son. Terror, sharp and primal, cut through Rashid like a blade. Philippa and Miguel were in danger, and it was his fault for not looking deeper, for treating this like a simple transaction instead of recognizing that every person comes with a history, with complications, with enemies. Increase security. Now. And find out everything about Dante Santos. I want to know who he's talked to, where he's staying, and what he wants." "Already done," Hassan said. "But Rashid, you need to tell her. She has a right to know her ex-husband is here." Rashid found Philippa in the garden, reading to Miguel under the shade of a palm tree. The scene was so peaceful, so normal, that he hesitated to shatter it. But he had no choice. "Miguel, why don't you go find Amira?" Rashid suggested gently. "I think she's in the kitchen with her mother." The boy looked to his mother, who nodded despite her confusion. "Go ahead, baby. I'll come find you in a few minutes." Once Miguel was out of earshot, Philippa stood. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "We need to talk." Inside. In the privacy of the guest house, Rashid told her everything. The falsified debt, the investigation, and finally, the news that made her face go white as paper. "Dante is here. In Dubai." "You didn't know." Rashid watched her carefully. "How would I know? I haven't spoken to him in 3 years, not since I filed for divorce and got the restraining order." Her hands were shaking. "He swore he'd find us, that I couldn't hide Miguel from him. But I thought we'd finally escaped. Why does he want Miguel? Felipa's laugh was bitter. Because Miguel is valuable. Dante isn't the boy's biological father. He married me when I was pregnant by another man who died before Miguel was born. But legally, Dante has rights. And more importantly, Miguel's biological father came from a wealthy family in Manila. If Dante can prove Miguel's paternity, he thinks he can extort money from them. My son is just a pawn in his game. Understanding crashed over Rashid like a wave. The surgery, the real debt. You paid it yourself, didn't you? By selling everything you had and going into hiding. Yes, and I thought I had succeeded. But then this miraculous opportunity appeared, enough money to disappear completely, to give Miguel a new life where Dante could never find us. It seemed too good to be true. Her eyes met his. Because it was, wasn't it? Someone set this up. Someone who knew my situation and used it. We'll find out who. And we'll stop them. I promise you, Felipa, no one is going to hurt you or Miguel. Why? The question was raw, vulnerable. Why do you care? Our agreement is almost broken anyway. You could let us go. Wash your hands of this complication. Rashid moved closer, his hands cupping her face. Because somewhere along the way, this stopped being a transaction. You and Miguel, you're not collateral damage I can afford. He struggled for the words. You're important to me. More important than I ever intended you to be. Felipa's eyes filled with tears. This is so messed up. I'm carrying your baby. My ex-husband is hunting us. And I'm falling for a man who was supposed to be nothing but a business arrangement. I know. But right now, the only thing that matters is keeping you both safe. Will you trust me? She nodded, even as fear gripped her heart. Because the truth was, she did trust him. Against all logic and self-preservation, she trusted Rashid Al-Mansuri with their lives. What neither of them knew was that Dante Santos wasn't working alone. And the conspiracy that had brought them together was about to explode in ways that would test everything they'd begun to feel for each other. The confrontation. It happened on a Thursday evening in late January. Felipa was 22 weeks pregnant, her belly round and undeniable. She'd just finished dinner with Miguel when the doorbell to the guest house rang. She wasn't expecting anyone. Rashid was in Abu Dhabi for a business meeting, not due back until morning. Hassan had mentioned earlier that he'd be leaving early to attend his daughter's school play. The security guards were at their posts, but they rarely came to the guest house itself. So who was at the door? Through the peephole, Felipa saw a man she'd hoped never to see again. Dante Santos stood on her doorstep, older than she remembered, harder, with eyes that had always frightened her with their cold calculation. Her blood turned to ice. Mama. Miguel called from the living room. Who is it? Go to your room, baby. Now. And lock the door. Something in her voice made Miguel obey without question. She heard his footsteps running, heard his door close and the lock click. Felipa grabbed her phone and called Rashid, praying he'd answer. It went to voicemail. She tried Hassan. Same result. She was about to call the security line when Dante's voice came through the door. I know you're in there, Felipa. We need to talk. Go away, Dante. You're violating the restraining order. Your restraining order is worthless here. This isn't the Philippines. Now open the door, or I'll make a scene that will bring your rich boyfriend running. Is that what you want? Her mind raced. She couldn't let him get to Miguel. She couldn't risk him causing trouble that might expose their arrangement to the media. Rashid's reputation would be destroyed, and her only leverage for protecting Miguel would vanish. With trembling hands, she opened the door just wide enough to slip outside, closing it firmly behind her. What do you want? Dante smiled, and it was like looking at a shark. There's my beautiful wife. You've filled out nicely. Pregnant, I see. Did you find another fool to trap? We are divorced. I'm not your wife. And Miguel isn't yours either. Leave us alone. Miguel is mine by law. And I've been doing some interesting research, Felipa. This billionaire you're living with, Rashid Al-Mansouri, very private man, very concerned with his reputation. I wonder what the media would pay to know that he's keeping a mistress in his guest house, a pregnant mistress with a child. It's not like that, isn't it? Dante circled her like a predator. Or is it worse? Did you sell yourself to him? Is that his baby you're carrying? How much did the billionaire pay for you? The words hit too close to the truth. Felipa felt her face flush. I'll take that as a yes, Dante laughed. This is perfect. Better than I could have hoped. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me Miguel. I'm his legal father, and I have every right to take him back to Manila. If you cooperate, I'll keep your dirty little secret. If you don't, I'll make sure every newspaper in the UAE knows that Sheikh Rashid Al-Mansouri bought himself a woman. I'll never give you Miguel. Never. Then I'll take him. And there's nothing you can do to stop me. Dante moved toward the door, but Felipa blocked his path. You'll have to go through me. If necessary. His hand shot out, grabbing her arm with bruising force. The sound of a car approaching made them both freeze. Headlights swept across the driveway. Someone was coming. Dante released her and stepped back into the shadows. This isn't over, he hissed. I'll be back. And next time, your billionaire won't be here to protect you. He vanished into the night just as Hassan's car pulled up. The attorney stepped out, took one look at Felipa's pale face and shaking hands, and knew something was terribly wrong. What happened? Dante. He was here. He knows everything. And he wants Miguel. The words tumbled out in a rush. We have to get Rashid back. We have to. Hassan was already on his phone. I'm calling him now. And I'm calling the police. Get inside and lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me or Rashid. Felipa stumbled back into the guest house, checked on Miguel, who was still safe in his room, and then collapsed on the sofa, her hands pressed to her stomach where the baby was kicking frantically, as if sensing its mother's terror. In Abu Dhabi, Rashid's phone finally rang through. Hassan's voice was tight with urgency. He found them. Dante Santos found them. You need to come back now. Rashid was already moving toward the helicopter. Don't let them out of your sight. I'll be there in 40 minutes. But 40 minutes can be an eternity when danger is circling. And Dante Santos had been planning this for longer than any of them realized. Rashid's helicopter touched down on his estate 37 minutes later, a personal record. He found Felipa in the guest house with Miguel curled up beside her, both protected by 4 security guards Hassan had called in. The attorney himself was on the phone with lawyers, police, and every contact he had in Dubai's law enforcement. Felipa. Rashid knelt beside the sofa, his hands gentle on her shoulders. Are you hurt? Did he touch you? I'm fine. We are fine. But Rashid, he knows. About the arrangement. About the baby. He's going to use it against you unless I give him Miguel. That's not going to happen. His voice was steel wrapped in silk. No one is taking Miguel anywhere. You don't understand. Dante has legal rights as Miguel's adoptive father. The divorce decree from the Philippines might not hold here. He could. Rashid, Hassan interrupted from across the room. You need to hear this. The attorney's face was grave as he held out his phone, showing a series of text messages and emails he'd uncovered. I know who set this up, who falsified Felipa's debt and made sure she was presented to you as the perfect candidate. Who? Your cousin, Tariq. The name hit Rashid like a physical blow. Tariq Al-Mansouri, his father's brother's son, who had always resented that Rashid inherited the family business instead of him. Tariq, who had been vocal about Rashid's need for an heir, who had suggested more than once that Rashid find a surrogate. Show me. Hassan pulled up emails between Tariq and a private investigator in Manila. The correspondence was damning. Tariq had hired someone to find a desperate woman, preferably one with complications that would make her vulnerable. They'd found Felipa, learned about her ex-husband, fabricated the debt, and arranged for Hassan's agency to discover her as a perfect candidate. But why? The answer came in a later email that made Rashid's blood run cold. Once the child is born and the arrangement becomes public, Rashid's reputation will be destroyed. The family will demand he step down, and as the next male heir, I'll finally take my rightful place. He wanted to discredit me, Rashid said slowly. He knew that if this arrangement went public, it would destroy my standing in Dubai society. The traditional families would never accept it. I'd be forced to resign from the business. And now Dante Santos is the perfect weapon, Hassan added. All Tariq has to do is encourage him to go to the media, and everything falls apart. Felipa's voice was small. I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. If I hadn't agreed. No. Rashid turned to her, his eyes fierce. This isn't your fault. You were trying to save your son. Tariq manipulated both of us, but he made one critical mistake. What's that? He assumed I'd care more about my reputation than about you and Miguel. He didn't count on. Rashid paused, the realization crystallizing into words. He didn't count on me falling in love with you. The room went silent. Even Hassan looked shocked. Felipa stared at Rashid, her eyes wide. What? I'm in love with you, Rashid repeated, this time with more certainty. I don't know when it happened. Maybe that first night in the storm. Maybe when I saw you with Miguel. Maybe in 1,000 small moments between then and now. But it's true. And I'm not going to let anyone tear our family apart. Our family? Felipa whispered. Yes. You, Miguel, and this baby. Our baby. Not my heir. Not a transaction. Our child, who deserves to be loved by both parents. Tears streamed down Felipa's face. You can't mean that. Your reputation, your business, everything you've built, means nothing without you. Rashid took her hands. I was so focused on legacy that I forgot about life. You taught me the difference. You and Miguel showed me what actually matters. But Dante will be dealt with, and so will Tariq. The next morning, Rashid called a meeting at his estate. Present were Hassan, his legal team, the chief of his security detail, and, unexpectedly, representatives from the Dubai Police's Family Protection Unit. But the most important attendee was Dante Santos, who arrived with a smug expression that quickly faded when he saw the assembled crowd. What is this? Dante demanded. This is the end of your schemes, Rashid said calmly. Sit down, Mr. Santos. For the next hour, Hassan methodically destroyed every claim Dante had. The adoption papers he'd filed for Miguel in the Philippines were fraudulent, discovered through cooperation with Manila authorities. The restraining order Felipa had obtained was being enforced internationally. And most damning, Dante's connections to organized crime made him an undesirable presence in the UAE. You have two choices, Rashid told him. You can return to Manila immediately and relinquish all claims to Miguel, or you can face deportation and potential charges for harassment, fraud, and attempted extortion. You can't do this, Dante snarled. I have rights. You have no rights, the police representative interjected. The UAE takes a very dim view of those who threaten children. Your visa has been revoked. You have 24 hours to leave the country voluntarily. As security escorted a raging Dante from the premises, Hassan turned to Rashid. That's one problem solved. But Tariq is still out there. Let me handle my cousin. Rashid found Tariq at the family's main office in downtown Dubai. His cousin's surprise at seeing him was genuine. Rashid, I thought you were dealing with that surrogate situation. I know everything, Tariq. The falsified debt, the private investigator, your plan to destroy my reputation. Tariq's face paled, then hardened. You can't prove anything. I can prove all of it. Hassan has the emails, the money transfers, everything. But I'm not going to expose you. What? Because despite everything, your family, and because exposing you would hurt the company and our employees. Rashid leaned forward. But you're going to resign. Effective immediately. You'll tell everyone it's for personal reasons, and you'll never contact me, Felipa, or Miguel again. In exchange, I won't press charges. And if I refuse, then I'll hand everything over to the authorities and let them sort it out. Your choice, cousin. Make it now. Tariq looked at Rashid with pure hatred, but he knew when he was beaten. Fine. I'll resign. But you're a fool, Rashid. That woman will destroy you anyway. No, Rashid said quietly. She's the only thing that saved me. 3 months later, April brought gentle rains to Dubai and the arrival of new life. Felipa gave birth to a healthy baby girl at 3:47 in the morning, with Rashid holding her hand through every contraction, every push, every moment of pain and triumph. When the doctor placed the baby in Felipa's arms, something that had been broken inside both of them healed. This was no transaction. This was their daughter. She has your eyes, Felipa whispered, tears streaming down her face. She has your strength, Rashid replied, kissing her forehead. Miguel, who had been waiting anxiously outside with Hassan and his family, was brought in to meet his baby sister. His face lit up with wonder. She's so tiny. Can I hold her? Carefully, Rashid guided Miguel's arms, helping him support the baby's head. Meet your sister, Layla. Layla, this is your big brother who's been so excited to meet you. The sight of Miguel cradling his baby sister with such gentle care made Rashid's throat tight with emotion. This was his family. Not the one he'd planned or purchased, but the one he'd found through the most unexpected journey. 2 weeks later, after Felipa had recovered, Rashid gathered everyone in his study. Felipa, Miguel, Hassan, and a family court judge. I'm tearing up our original contract, Rashid announced, literally shredding the document that had brought them together. And I'd like to propose a new arrangement, one that actually matters. He turned to Felipa, then dropped to one knee. Felipa Santos, you came into my life as a transaction, but you became my everything. You taught me that love isn't a luxury. It's the only thing that makes life worth living. You showed me that legacy isn't about blood or business. It's about the people we choose to love and the family we build together. He pulled out a ring box. Will you marry me? Will you let me be a real father to Miguel and Layla? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that you're the best choice I never knew I was making? Felipa was crying so hard she could barely speak. Yes. Yes, of course yes. Miguel cheered. Hassan wiped his eyes. And baby Layla, as if sensing the significance of the moment, let out a tiny cry that sounded remarkably like approval. The judge, smiling broadly, pulled out adoption papers. If it pleases the court, I have documents ready to finalize Miguel's adoption by Sheikh Rashid Al Mansouri, with full parental rights and protections under UAE law. No one will ever be able to challenge his place in this family again. It would be my honor, Rashid said, looking at Miguel. If that's okay with you, Habibi. Miguel launched himself at Rashid, wrapping his arms around his soon-to-be father's neck. Does this mean I can call you Baba? I would like nothing more. 1 year later, the Al Mansouri estate looked like something from a dream. White roses and jasmine decorated every surface, and gentle music floated on the warm evening air. The wedding was small by Dubai standards, just close friends and family, but it was perfect. Felipa walked down the aisle in a simple white dress, one hand holding Miguel's, who was very proud of his role walking his mother to her groom, and the other arm cradling 1-year-old Layla, who was attempting to eat the flowers in her mother's bouquet. Rashid stood at the altar in traditional Emirati dress, his eyes locked on his approaching family. When Hassan asked who gave this woman in marriage, Miguel spoke up clearly. She gives herself, and I give my approval. The guests laughed, and Rashid grinned, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. As they exchanged vows, Felipa thought about the desperate woman who had signed that contract 1.5 years ago, who had agreed to sell her womb to save her son. She'd thought she was making the ultimate sacrifice. But instead, she'd found the ultimate gift, A family born not from blood or transaction, but from the kind of love that transforms everything it touches. I vow to love you not because you saved us, Felipa said, tears in her eyes, but because you showed me that being saved isn't about money or security. It's about finding someone who sees you, truly sees you, and loves you anyway. You saw a woman, not a transaction. A mother, not a surrogate. A partner, not a convenience. And in seeing me that way, you taught me to see myself that way too. Rashid's own voice was thick with emotion. I vow to love you not because you gave me an heir, but because you gave me something far more valuable, a reason to live beyond legacy. You taught me that love isn't a luxury we can't afford. It's the only currency that actually matters. You and Miguel and Layla, you're my fortune, my purpose, my everything. When they kissed, sealing their promises, Miguel cheered loudly and Layla clapped her tiny hands, and everyone who witnessed it knew they were seeing something rare, a love story that had started in the darkness of desperation but had somehow found its way to the light. Later that night, after the celebration had ended and Miguel was asleep in his room, now permanently his, in the main house, right next to Layla's nursery, Rashid and Felipa stood on their balcony overlooking the city. Do you ever regret it? Rashid asked quietly. The way we started. Felipa thought about it honestly. I regret the desperation that brought me to that choice. I regret the system that makes mothers feel they have to sell pieces of themselves to save their children. But do I regret meeting you? Never. I just wish we could have found each other differently. Maybe we couldn't have, Rashid mused. Maybe I was so locked in my tower of wealth and loneliness that it took something as dramatic as our arrangement to break through my walls. Maybe you were so focused on survival that you couldn't see the possibility of thriving until circumstances forced you to slow down and accept help. You think we needed that contract to find each other. I think we needed to break that contract to find ourselves. He pulled her close. The man who made that arrangement isn't who I am anymore. And the woman who signed it isn't who you are either. We became better versions of ourselves by choosing each other over the agreement. From the nursery, Layla's cry pierced the night. Felipa smiled. That's my cue. Our cue, Rashid corrected, taking her hand. They went together to soothe their daughter, and as Rashid picked up Layla and rocked her gently while singing a lullaby in Arabic, Felipa realized the truth leaves him speechless was simply this. Love cannot be bought or bargained for. It can only be chosen, again and again, in 1,000 small moments that add up to a lifetime. Rashid had tried to buy an heir and ended up finding a family. Felipa had tried to sell her service and ended up claiming her worth. And together, they'd learned that the most valuable things in life, love, trust, family, belonging, are the very things that can never be reduced to a transaction. That was the truth that left them both speechless and grateful. And finally, completely, home. Themes of our wonderful stories today. Transactional relationships versus genuine love. Desperation and the choices it forces upon us. The danger of treating people as commodities. Found family and unconventional paths to belonging. Redemption and second chances. The true meaning of legacy. How love transforms and heals. Thanks for taking your precious time watching. Please, before you leave, don't forget to subscribe, like and comment where you